Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Thomas. Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I am your host. I've just wrapped up 2 editions of the Thomas Take. Obviously, my mock UFC 205 card, which will be at Madison Square Garden, the mixed martial arts debut, the UFC debut at the greatest venue in the world, Madison Square Garden, and in New York City. I can't wait. I can't wait for November 12th. Tune in for that. Listen to who I feel should fight on that card, and also tune in to my UFC 203 preview and prediction. Just wrapped up with that, but this is about my football team, the Buffalo Bills, my team, the team I root for. I'm an avid fan of the Buffalo Bills. I try to be, at least. Whenever someone says, "You a Bills fan?" I say, I try to be. It's tough, but I'll never stop. So I'll never stop hoping that one day this city of Buffalo, Western New York, will see a Vince Lombardi trophy. I have hope that eventually that will happen before I die, before my last day on this great earth and this great country. Colin Kaepernick. So anyway, in a perfect world, UFC 203, UFC 205, I talked about that, but I want to talk about, in a perfect world, the Buffalo Bills. What would be my dream scenario for the Buffalo Bills? My hopes of what should happen for the future. If this happened, I would be elated as a Buffalo Bills fan. Utterly elated, so happy, just elated. That's the only word I can think of. So this season I have low expectations for the Buffalo Bills. They have a lot of defensive holes, lack of defensive depth, and obviously if they're big three, the triplet of running back, or quarterback, running back, wide receiver, Tyrod Taylor, LaShawn McCoy, and Sammy Watkins, if 2 or more or one of those pieces get hurt throughout this season, I do not see the Bills making the playoffs, and even if they were to stay healthy, I have serious doubt that they could be above 8-8, especially with Marcel Darius suspended, Sean Henderson suspended, and obviously, as I alluded to earlier, the lack of defensive depth on their roster really concerns me. I find it very troubling, and obviously, this is not a concept that is lost. Obviously, it's not lost on Bills fans. It's not lost on football analysts around the NFL and ESPN and all that stuff. So I really see it as something that is quite troubling due to the fact that they have had the same general manager for a few years now, in Doug Whaley. And I'm not a Doug Whaley fan, and the reasons why, because of this very reason. He's been a part of the Bills for the last 6 years. He was named Director of Pro Personnel on February 10th, 2010. He saw the team's personnel department, assisted GM Buddy Nix at the time, and then Nix stepped down in 2013 in May, and Whaley became Buffalo's GM, 3 days later, 3 days after. It was like May 13th or something like that. So Whaley had just recently signed a contract extension in January, and that I found troubling. Reason why I don't feel like Doug Whaley has done what he has needed to do in order to make this team a playoff contender, and that's obvious with their wins and loss record. The last few years, Doug Marrone was their coach. Rex Ryan is their coach now. So, Doug Marrone, in his time, you can say what you want, but, obviously trading away your first-round draft choice for a rookie wide receiver, that was kind of crazy. For, moving up just 5 spots in a draft, trading away your first-round draft choice in a draft that featured some of the, arguably one of the greatest, rookie draft classes of all time, with Odell Beckham coming to mind, Brandon Cooks coming to mind, Kelvin Benjamin coming to mind, Mike Evans coming to mind, and Sammy Watkins, obviously. So, if he was a real scout, like Pittsburgh proclaimed he was, he would have known that. He would have known that he didn't need to go out and reach for another receiver. He would have maybe stood pat at the 9th overall selection in 2014 and, made something happen. Maybe even traded back like a Bill Polian would have. Trade it back, get more picks, and maybe even trade back all the way to the back end of the first round and take a Kelvin Benjamin, a 6'5" guy that played at Florida State with the quarterback that you drafted in the first round. Draft a Mike Evans, a guy that, is obviously a massive human being to play the wide receiver position with the physical attributes that he has. And I love Sammy Watkins. This isn't about Sammy Watkins. It's not about Sammy Watkins being a bad pick. It's the principle of a GM having the gall to move up only 5 spots and trade a first-round pick for that following year. The Buffalo Bills are not in any position, top to bottom roster-wise, to give away first-round picks like free candy bars. They're just not. We need to, move on from that. That was a big mistake. It was. There's no doubt about it. Sammy Watkins, I love him to death. Great guy. Awesome guy. Great fit for Buffalo. But, as a GM, there's no room for that. That was not a great general manager decision. 2013, his first year as GM, they went 6-10. 2014, they went 9-7. 2015, they went 8-8. So that's basically 15-7 the first 2 years. If I'm doing the math right, it's 22-25, I believe. It's mediocre. It's under 500. So what? 23-25. Yeah, 23-25. That's mediocre. That's not good. Terry Pegula, at some point, the Buffalo Bills owner, is going to realize that I spent $1.4 billion on a franchise that was only worth around $800 million. I overpaid to keep this team here, massively overpaid to keep this team in Western New York. That was worth close to $1 billion. Excuse myself, I said $800 million. It was close to $1 billion. They were close to that point, but he overpaid for them. He outbid Donald Trump and Bon Jovi. So he kept the team here. At some point, he's going to realize I've spent so much money on this team staying here, and I'm not seeing it get better. I'm not seeing our team get better under Doug Whaley's watch. If they miss the playoffs, Whaley gets fired. Dream scenario. If they miss the playoffs, under 7-9, which I anticipate that they will be, Doug Whaley should get fired. That's my dream scenario. My next dream scenario is one of two things. If Doug Whaley is fired, if the Buffalo Bills do miss the playoffs, I would hope that Terry Pegula would find that football czar that he alluded to last season. And that football czar being the only man that ever made the Bills worth anything. And that is Hall of Fame GM Bill Polian. Bring back Bill Polian. It's literally too good of a fit. One, his name is Bill, and he'd be running the Bills. That was kind of the joke back in the day. Two, he's the only guy that has ever fixed this team. He's the only guy that understands this community. He's the only guy that knows what this team means to the community, top to bottom, in any suburb of Western New York and in Buffalo. And he has adamantly said that the one regret in his career was that he didn't stay in Buffalo longer, and that he never brought a Super Bowl championship to Buffalo. In the last, years of his career, he wanted it to last longer with the Colts. Jim Irsay is notoriously one of the most ignorant owners in NFL history. So he was fired by Jim Irsay, and I thought he had a lot more to give to the Colts. I think he has a lot more to give in his career. He's enjoying his gig with ESPN, and he should. He's doing really well at it on NFL Insiders. I really enjoy him on ESPN, obviously, but his success is in the war room, drafting players, making trades, and not even as a GM. Bill Polian doesn't have to be the GM. Bill Polian can be the vice president of operations. Basically, it would be Terry Pegula, Russ Brandon, then Bill Polian. Then the GM. The GM, Chris Polian, worked under Bill Polian, his son. I think that would work. Chris Polian knows a lot about football and personnel matchups and, finding the right talent to fit the coach's needs. Would that mean Rex is gone? I don't know. Maybe they would maybe they could make that work if they decided that they wanted to keep Rex and they didn't want to go the Bill Polian route. Maybe you put Rex Ryan in charge of of all football operations. As far as the GM and the vice president, you put him in position to get his own talent to fit his needs as a coach. Rex Ryan has always kind of had his own way of analyzing talent, and you can say some of it's worked, some of it hasn't. I do remember he signed a running back that most people thought were done, in LaDainian Tomlinson, and he went to 2 AFC championships with the Jets in a row. So there has been cases where Rex Ryan has been highly successful as an NFL coach. To say he's completely mediocre is a stretch at the least. And I think that he knows that if he put his imprint on the team himself, it would work. And that's option number 2, to give Rex Ryan full reins of the Buffalo Bills. And also option number 1, hire Bill Polian, hire Chris Polian, and bring in a head coach that would fit those 2 guys, if they did not want to keep Rex. That would be my perfect dream scenario. My number 3 dream scenario: if the Bills finish under 7-9, which I think they will, that will be in large part, obviously, due to the game's most important position, and that is quarterback. I'm going to get to part 2 of In a Perfect World, the Buffalo Bills, and I'll be right back. Thanks for listening.